Hi, my name is Amy Jade. What we did for our project was to do research on behalf of Missouri Political Literacy. Missouri Political Literacy is a nonprofit with the goal of spreading civic education and getting more people more involved in their local government. They do that by taking board bills from the Board of Aldermen, translating them out of legalese into everyday speak, and putting them all in one location where people can easily access them by topic and by location of where they live in St. Louis, so that someone who needs to know what's going on in the 22nd Ward can look up very quickly. These are the things that are being passed that are going to affect the 22nd Ward, or somebody who is interested in the way their schools are being funded can look up different board bills that are about that kind of category and whatnot. Um, so we wanted to do this research to try to get a better idea of how best the resource can serve St. Louis as a whole, how the nonprofit can be most effective in fulfilling its goal for the city, and what the population that we hope to serve might want out of our resource. We started with some research. Our primary research was some surveys that we handed out at neighborhood hotspots. Neighborhood hotspots we defined as locations within different parts of St. Louis that had high traffic, that were well known within their communities, and served as some type of meeting ground for a lot of different types of people. So that included a lot of coffee shops, libraries, restaurants, bars, etc. And alongside those surveys, we also conducted a series of interviews with people that we met at neighborhood association meetings. Those neighborhood associations are gathering things for people who live within different neighborhoods of St. Louis so that they can discuss the different things that they have as concerns for their area, things that they want to proposition their aldermen to create legislation about, all of the nuts and bolts that is necessary for living in a democratic society. The neighborhood associations tend to be that kind of like first puzzle piece of the greater society. So we had those interviews with those people. On our secondary research, we did demographic studies on St. Louis as a whole, and then ward by ward, where we researched voter turnout, we researched voter engagement, we researched demographics of St. Louis, various things that we thought would be important for us to know for our resource as a whole. So the survey, just an overview of the survey, it was designed to give us an idea of where people were at in their current civic education. Did they know which ward they lived in? Did they know who their alderman was? Did they know the president of the Board of Aldermen? Did they know the mayor? Did they know all these little facets of local government that tend to come up for a vote very often, and how the voting process works, how legislation and city government works, that kind of a thing. So that was the first kind of aspect of the survey, and then the other aspect was interest level. Were people interested in getting more involved in their local government? If people weren't interested and didn't want our resource, we would still probably put it out there, but we would get an idea that most people don't really care about it. But these we thought were interesting and necessary things in order to make a resource that best serves its community. Our sample trended younger because of these neighborhood hotspots tended to serve younger folks, and it was a lot easier to convince younger folks to take these surveys. But our various like demographics within the survey were pretty racial and gender diverse, which was exciting for us, and exciting for a city that tends to have a lot of racial and gender diversity within it. So getting into the interviews now, I'm just doing another overview on the interviews. They were conversational with just different individuals who were coming and going. They were typically more civically engaged, which was obvious because they were people who were attending their neighborhood association meetings, which tends to not be people who don't care about their local government. That way that they were more invested in something and they were more likely to probably utilize our resource. And so we wanted to get their ideas and their opinions on things that would be necessary features for our resource, different suggestions that they might have had for our resource so that it would best serve a community. And these people seemed very interested in what we had to offer, what Missouri political literacy has to offer. The goals of these conversations just was pooling brains together, getting a good brainstorm, and how this resource can be what we all hope that it can be. The demographics of both the survey and the interviews, we had 87 people fill out the surveys. It's not a high number. We wish we could have gotten more, but because of our personal constraints on income, time, and our abilities to reach a vast majority of St. Louis, we don't have like a email registry that we could have just mass emailed. We don't have access to a mailing registry that we could have utilized, but maybe in the future, if we could get grant money, we could do something like that. But this early survey, we were able to get 36 white individuals to take it. We got 28 black individuals. We got 5 mixed race individuals, 6 Latinx people, 11 Asian people, and 1 Native American individual. With the interviews, they were pretty even. We were able to get 4 white, 4 black, and 2 people of mixed race, white and black. So we were very excited with kind of the way that we were able to get a decent diversity of our surveys and our interviews, and so we could get an idea of what these populations are thinking. No, we don't think that it's a large enough sample to get a general consensus of St. Louis, but we think that this is a step in the right direction, that we can start making plans and decisions and early decisions about our resources.
In Branson, we celebrate Christmas the traditional way. Then we add more lights, shows, parades, and holiday festivities for good measure.
This one.
Because it's a Branson.
Oh, goodness. Okay, sorry about that. That's what you get for recording this kind of a presentation in this kind of a setting. Anyway, let me continue. Sorry about the interruption. Branson's fine. I've got nothing against it, but it's Branson. So the results. Over half of our respondents were underinformed on their representation in city government. So we had 46% of respondents just have absolutely no knowledge of their ward, their alderman, or other aspects of city government, which wasn't overtly surprising for us. We did have a younger audience. Younger folks tend to move around a lot in the city, aren't typically super engaged in their local government. But it was kind of disheartening to see that high of a number. 16% of people had partial knowledge, which meant that they might have known their ward, they might have known who their representative was, but they didn't know both of those things, or they didn't know other aspects that we thought were critical aspects of understanding local government. And then we had 38% of respondents who had full knowledge. We think that might be a little high for certain aspects, but we were going through certain hubs that do have kind of more of a political lean to them, but still, it's kind of representative of a general disengagement with local government that a lot of people have. Lots going on over here. But it was some early facts and figures that we were seeing that this is something that we can improve on possibly. But anyway, I will continue. The interview results. The interview results were very interesting. Our conversations that we had with other people stressed this need for more citizens of St. Louis to get registered, and our secondary research backed that up. I can show you that in a little bit. But people did seem interested in the resource that we had and what we could provide people. They offered a lot of suggestions of features and add-ons that we could provide. We also got a couple people who were willing to become active in Missouri political literacy so that we would have more volunteers working on it. These interviews were pretty successful in getting an idea of what people who typically were more civically engaged wanted out of a resource like that. There was a stress on the location-based categories. They really liked the idea that they could just type in which ward they were in and see these are the policies that could affect your ward. This is your Board of Aldermen's contact information that you can reach out to them and figure out what's going on, if you want to call someone about it, if you want to support or campaign against something that your alderman is doing, then it gave you that kind of a resource. So they wanted that ability to look up the location. And then other people really wanted the topic-based categories. So they wanted things that were specifically about environment, human rights, workers' rights, labor rights. They wanted to know about different types of shifting money around. They wanted to know about appointments in various government areas, those kind of things. And the topic-based categories we thought might be difficult. There are a lot of topic-based categories that could be iffy. So we thought that maybe hashtags on each of these things so that people can search a hashtag and find the things that they might be interested in, alongside each of these breakdowns of the breakdowns of the board bills could have these hashtags that would be easily searched on our database. So that was the idea that we had about that. Secondary research. So slightly over, this last November, there was a vote on Proposition P. Slightly over 40,000 voters were active on Proposition P. So that gave us an idea of who is voting in these kind of off-election years. And that was data we got from the Post-Dispatch. And with the 2010 census, 40,000 voters put that at about 12.5% of residents of St. Louis were active. Some figures that I had seen from different journalistic sources in St. Louis said that there was about 21% voter turnout of registered voters. So this was something that we wanted to address, we wanted to affect, and we wanted to increase the amount of people who were turning out and voting. The 2016 voter turnout maps showed disparities in North City and Deep South City. So those were some areas that we thought would be important to address for voter registration and whatnot. So the conclusion that we had about the research that we did was that wards 7, 8, 10, 16, and 23, which were more of your like central corridor wards would be most likely the early adopters of our resource. They tended to be the most engaged politically and the most curious about our resource. They vote at the highest amounts, but then wards 3, 4, 5, 22, and 27 were the most underrepresented in terms of voting. So we think that we can target those areas and try to create improvement in those areas, people turning out to vote, getting engaged, etc. So one thing that we think will be a more important aspect of our resource than we originally thought was going to be civic education. So getting people knowledgeable about how the process works and what they can do to affect it is going to be a major thing that we need to focus on top of the original things that the resource was going to supply people in St. Louis. That is my presentation. Thank you so much, and take care.